Hey y'all, Matt Smith back here with you. Week 1 SEC preview. It is time. We got a nice little palate wetter last week in week 0. Illinois upset Nebraska. But week 1 is finally here. We got a great weekend of football ahead. Actually, starting tonight, it's Wednesday morning as I record this video. We got UAB and Jacksonville State in Montgomery tonight, an all Alabama battle. Should be a win for the Blazers, but again, a nice way to get the weekend started tonight. Before we get rolling and look at the games, just want to give a big old shout out to Beano Cook, the late great Beano Cook. Would have been 90 today. This was his favorite time of the year. The man loved football, never married, never had kids. He just loved college football. Miss him dearly. He was a great personality for the sport, and just a big old Sky Point happy birthday to Beano Cook. Would have been 90 today. So moving on to the games, I'm going to look at these in kind of 3 tiers. We have 6 games that I think will be mostly duds. We have 4 games that involve group of 5 teams that I actually think could be pretty interesting. Some because they might be competitive, others because there's such an interesting storyline to watch. And then the 4 big ones, the 4 Power 5 versus Power 5 games. We'll go into pretty deep dives on those games. So start with the duds. FAU at Florida Saturday night. Willie Taggart, if you might have forgotten, is now at FAU, second-year coach. Thought he was going to have a long rivalry with Florida when he was at Florida State there for a minute back in 2018 and 2019. He's the coach of the Owls. Gators about a 24.5 point favorite. Dan Mullen tends to roll when he's a big favorite, going back to his time at Mississippi State. So I kind of like the Gators to cover that number, but not a whole lot to really glean out of that one, I wouldn't think. We'll see how Emory Jones looks, but bigger games to come for him, of course, with Alabama looming in a couple weeks. What else do we got? Kentucky, Louisiana Monroe. ULM might be the worst team in the FBS, certainly bottom 5. Terry Bowden, now the coach there. Obviously a tough preseason camp for him, losing his father a few weeks back. Rich Rodriguez has resurfaced as the offensive coordinator. His son is going to be the quarterback for the Warhawks, Rhett Rodriguez. Kentucky, though, about a 4-touchdown favorite. They should roll, no problems there. South Carolina, Shane Beamer era gets rolling against Eastern Illinois. Zeb Nolan, the grad assistant, who is now a player, started at North Dakota State as a player, came to South Carolina to work as a grad assistant. He's a starting quarterback. Who knew? Luke Doty is injured, should be back next week, I would think, but for Saturday night, should be an easy win against a bad Eastern Illinois team. It's Zeb Nolan, so just a really interesting a quirk to the Week 1 slate there. Tennessee, they'll start the SEC season on Thursday night against Bowling Green, another bad team who could be one of the 5 worst in the FBS. Scott Leffler is there. Brian Van Gorder, fortunately for the Bowling Green fans, has retired as defensive coordinator. He has, for some reason, forgot how to coach over the past 6 or 7 years. His coaching career, for all intents and purposes, is probably over, but that does not mean Bowling Green is going to be much better this year. They went winless in the short MAC season last year, but Tennessee should roll pretty comfortably, about a 4.5 to 5 touchdown favorite for the Vols. Vanderbilt, Clark Lee starts his Vanderbilt tenure against East Tennessee State. That's actually the last team Vanderbilt beat back in November of 2019. East Tennessee, based in Johnson City, about a 4-hour trip to Nashville. Probably an ugly game, but Vanderbilt should roll pretty comfortably there. In the West, only one game I'm really totally checked out on is Akron and Auburn. Akron's just slightly better than Bowling Green in the MAC. I think that was their only win last year against the Falcons. Auburn about 38 point favorite in Brian Harson's first game. They'll roll. So the first-year head coach is scheduling smart. They'll get easy wins, and all will be well for 7 days at least in their first go-rounds in the SEC. Moving on to the group of 5 games that kind of interest me. Rice and Arkansas, kind of an early to mid-afternoon unique time slot kick on Saturday, 2 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock Central in Fayetteville. Rice was bad for a couple years, but they kind of turned the corner last year. Got a big win at Marshall, who was ranked number 15 last year. Mike Bloomgren's, I believe, in his 3rd or 4th year now after coming over from Stanford. Luke McCaffrey, they haven't named a starter. They might play 2, but Luke McCaffrey, who played at Nebraska last year, is in the running, probably will at least play part of the time for the Owls against Arkansas in an old Southwest Conference rivalry. Hogs about a 20-point favorite. That number feels about right. No strong gambling lean there. But an interesting game just because of the history and because they have a quarterback who's played Power 5 football. Central Michigan and Missouri. Jim McElwain, now the head coach at Central Michigan. He was actually fired about 6 days before Florida was supposed to play at Missouri back in 2017. 4 years later, he opens the season with the Chippewas down in Columbia. Central Michigan, a pretty good MAC team, won the division a couple years back. Above average, he's above 500 in his time in Mount Pleasant. So an interesting game there. Tigers about a 2-touchdown favorite. I think they'll win by, I'm pretty bullish on Missouri, so I'll lay the points there. But with McElwain against an SEC team, I think it's an interesting matchup. What else do we got there? Mississippi State, Louisiana Tech. Louisiana Tech, one of the more consistent group of 5 teams. They've had a winning season now for 6 or 7 straight years. Quarterback situation is still up in the air. It looks like it's going to be Austin Kendall. Started at Oklahoma, transferred to West Virginia, transferred again to La Tech. So it looks like he'll be going into Starkville to face Mississippi State, who had that great debut last year. Obviously petered out pretty quickly after that. But we'll see if the Bulldogs can match what they did in Week 1 last year when they beat LSU down in Baton Rouge. And finally, Texas A&M, 4-touchdown favorite against Kent State, but Kent State's my pick to win the MAC. They're a fun offense with Sean Lewis, the coach, Dustin Crum, the quarterback, a fifth-year senior. He's a Dino Babers guy, so they kind of run the wide open, pass it all over the place, run 100 plays, and see what happens. So, again, I don't think they'll score more than probably 20 points against a very good A&M defense, but a pretty good test for the Aggies, considering they have a very soft early schedule before Alabama rolls in October. Big games, of course, Georgia-Clemson Saturday night. I like Clemson. I think their defensive front is the best unit in this game. Georgia's had some offensive line issues in camp. I think that's where this game swings. I think both defensive fronts do have the advantage in this game, but I think it's a little bit more one-sided for Clemson. Quarterbacks, I don't see a strong edge between JT Daniels and DJ Uyunglele. Some new skill position talent breaking in for Clemson. Georgia's probably a little bit better in the backfield with their four-headed monster. Both secondaries kind of reloading a bit, but again, I think that front four of Clemson is the best unit on this field. I trust Brent Venables more than any coach on this staff. I like Clemson playing in a familiar venue in Charlotte where they play the conference title game every year. So I like Clemson by about 7 to 10 points. I'd lay the 3 points with the Tigers. And again, Georgia's fine. I'm picking them to win the SEC. They'll regroup, but I think this is a bad matchup. I like the Tigers to win. LSU, UCLA, that gets started about an hour after Georgia-Clemson on Saturday night. We saw UCLA last weekend play pretty well against Hawaii. Their running game looks pretty good. I'm not sure they can throw the football, and I think that could be the downfall, but I think this is a really good game. I think LSU pulls it out in the end. I hate taking points when it's like a 3 or 4 point line, but my score pick is going to be LSU by 2, so technically I'll be taking those 4 points with UCLA. But I wouldn't bet any real money on it. But I'll take LSU, maybe on a last-second field goal to escape the Rose Bowl, which has been a house of horrors for the SEC teams over the last 10 or 15 years. Ole Miss, Louisville, Monday night. A lot of points. Ole Miss was kind of in the position Louisville was last year after a good first year for Scott Satterfield in 2019. They went belly up last year, went 4-7. Ole Miss trying to avoid that fate. I think they score a lot. Malik Cunningham's an interesting quarterback for Louisville, but I think he's too inconsistent, won't make too many mistakes, and I don't think he can keep up with Matt Corral and that Ole Miss offense. So over under 75, Ole Miss about a 10-point favorite now. I'll go Ole Miss in the over. I think this does get into a shootout, and Ole Miss just outlasts them 49-31, something like that, I would think. Earlier in the day, kind of skipped over that one, Alabama and Miami. Should be a big game, but just because Alabama being a 19, 20-point favorite, we know what Alabama does in these neutral site season openers, and I don't really see much different on Saturday. I do think Alabama's offense may be a little clunky to start the season, but I think this defense will handle Derek King with ease. I like the under in this game. The line's about 18-19. That sounds about right. No strong lean there. 34-14 maybe. I think this Alabama defense is going to be great, probably holding teams to 10, 11 points a game this year, I would think. They're just going to dominate some bad offenses. And Miami's not a bad offense by any stretch, but with King coming off the ACL, Week 1 tends to have some offenses struggling early. I like the under as the best bet in this game and for Alabama to win by about 17-21. That line's pretty good, around 19 there. So those are the 14 SEC games. Other games to watch, the Big Ten loaded slate. Thursday night, Ohio State, Minnesota. I like the Gophers actually to pull this one off. I think we're due for a big upset. I keep going back to how well Minnesota played when they had that undefeated game against Penn State back in November of 2019. Embraced the moment. That wasn't a great Penn State team, but it was a top 5 undefeated team. And they handled the moment well. About 19-20 starters back for the Gophers, experienced quarterback in Tanner Morgan. C.J. Stroud making his first start under center for the Buckeyes. Should be a rocking crowd up in Minneapolis. And I like the Gophers to pull this one off. That's my big upset pick in Week 1. 2 other really good Big Ten games Saturday. Penn State, Wisconsin, the big noon Fox game. Indiana, Iowa at 3:30 on BTN. 2 really fun conference games there to get rolling. Some other national games to note Sunday night. Notre Dame, Florida State. Thursday night, Boise State, UCF is also pretty interesting. What else we got here on my sheet? Oh, Louisiana and Texas, of course. Billy Napier, the Raging Cajuns went up to Iowa State last year in the opener. Beat the Cyclones, who ended up winning the Big 12 regular season title. Can they go to Austin and win? I'm intrigued by that. I think the Longhorns pull it out. But that's a tough game. That's a 4:30 Fox game, so kind of a standalone time slot as well in between Alabama, Miami, and Georgia Clemson. So definitely check that one out. Some other off-the-radar games. Late night, Pac-12 after dark, Nevada and Cal. Cal's a 3-point favorite. Nevada's an off-the-radar group of 5 New Year's 6 contender. They're not getting a lot of love because we're also in love with Cincinnati, and they're going to clearly be the group of 5 team in the New Year's 6. Not so fast. Keep an eye on Nevada. They're really good. Carson Strong could be a first-round draft pick next year at quarterback. Jay Norvell's doing a really nice job there. Oh, what else do we got off the radar? Stanford, Kansas State. You want a game that's going to be over in about 2.5 hours Saturday? Noon kick, 11 a.m. Central. A lot of man ball. Skylar Thompson back for the Wildcats after getting hurt last year. We know what Stanford likes to do. Pretty good Pac-12, Big 12 matchup there. Oh, what else did I jot down here? Friday night, good doubleheader. Early kick, UNC, Virginia Tech in Blacksburg. Sam Howell starts his Heisman campaign, 6 o'clock Eastern time, so be prepared. That's going to get started early, part of a doubleheader. Michigan State, Northwestern will be the nightcap there. Again, kind of like Stanford, Kansas State there. Physical football. Spartans upset Northwestern last year in East Lansing. Wildcats back home under the lights in Evanston, hoping to return the favor there. So, a couple best bets that I kind of like. I'll get into more of this in my written preview. Please check that out, of course, at southernpigskin.com. I like NC State on Thursday night against USF. They're about a 17, 18-point favorite. Really bad USF team. I think the Wolfpack should be pretty good this year, so lay those points. Hearing a lot of San Jose State buzz. They did get a Week 0 game under their belt last week against Southern Utah. Won the Mountain West last year, but of course played no non-conference games, so no Power 5 games. They're going to the Coliseum to face USC, only about a 14-point dog. I'm going the other way from the public. I love USC to cover this game and blow out the Spartans and give them a taste of reality there. Syracuse and Ohio, that's kind of a pick-em. Frank Solich, of course, has retired for Ohio. I'm more bullish on the Qs this year after a really bad 2020 season. I think they can get back to maybe 5-7 this year. Pick-em, I like the Orange to bounce back and win that game outright against Ohio. ND Florida State, Sunday night. Over-under is about 56. I love the under here. I think Notre Dame's defense should be really good under Marcus Freeman. Again, I think the offense could be a little bit clunky with all the turnover they've had there. Jack Cohn starting at quarterback. That passing game still pretty unproven. So I like the under 56 in that game. And then Southern Miss, South Alabama. That's the other one I kind of like. South Alabama, about a 1.5 home dog. Won last year in Hattiesburg, but there are 2 new head coaches. Will Hall coming over to Southern Miss from Tulane. Kane Womack was the DC at Indiana last year. So just a slight home dog there. That's the only reason I kind of like the Jaguars. I think their last coaching staff kind of underachieved with the talent they have there. So that's my Week 1 preview. Again, check out southernpigskin.com for the written preview. We'll detail this in word form, of course, get into a little bit more on the gambling side of things with score picks and such. And rate, review, subscribe, please. I'll have a Week 1 recap video, of course, after this weekend. Follow me on Twitter at MattSmithCFB. Let me know your thoughts. Please interact with me there. Appreciate all the support and the feedback from my SEC preview videos. They were great. So thanks you all so much for watching, and I will talk to you soon.